Hello there, my name is Nick Zuccarello and I'm going to be taking you through learning the Unreal Engine 5 series that I'm putting together for you. So this one might be a little bit different. We're not going to be doing too much creation inside of the engine itself. There are some tools in there that allows you to make geometry and some other things, but we're going to be looking at how to use Unreal Engine 5 with Maya and maybe some other programs like Substance Painter, Photoshop, or ZBrush. So to get started, this first thing that we're going to be taking a look at is actually just getting the engine itself. So we're going to download the Unreal Engine 5. We're going to go and browse the Epic launcher that lets you choose the different projects or different projects that you have in the past, or choose some things from the marketplace. We're going to create our first project. Then we're going to do a quick tour of the engine and just kind of look around just a little bit. We're going to learn a little bit about navigation. I'll teach you how to store some camera views. We'll take a look at how we can view some of the different assets within the engine, and then I'll show you a little bit about the Unreal directory structure and how you can get to some of the files that it creates outside of the program. So that'll get us set up to where we can start working back and forth between a program like Maya and Unreal. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is just download the engine, and this should be pretty simple. You can open up any web browser that you want. I'm just going to use Chrome, and you can type in Unreal Engine 5. You could add a download to that too if you want, but you should probably land to this spot within here. It's pretty simple. You probably will need to create an account, and you can go ahead and do that, but there should be a download button. And again, at the time of this making of the video, this is what it looks like, and this is where you can download this. You might end up finding it looks different on your screen depending on whenever you're loading this up. But the steps should be pretty simple. You're going to sign up for an account with Unreal, and you are going to download the engine. And then after that, go ahead and get that installed. There shouldn't be anything too significant about actually downloading and installing that. And then once you have it installed, I'll meet you at the launcher and we'll start talking about the launcher and what's involved with that. Okay, here we are at the Epic launcher. You should create your account and you will see that your login information will be here, your settings will be here. But let's just go real quickly through this. I think the thing that you're probably going to care the most about is coming to this Unreal Engine and going to the library, and we'll look at that, and we'll look at how to add the various versions of the engine within there and how to start our own project. But before we do that, let's just do a quick tour. So you've got a store area where you can buy content within here. You can buy games within this area. So you can see here there's a bunch of different titles that you could choose from and find. So if you're into wanting to play some different games and stuff like that, there's where you go for the store. If you go to the library area, then you can see this is different titles and things that you have purchased over the time, so you can get access to that. And then let's go back to the Unreal Engine itself. And if you go to the front tab, you can see there's an area for news, and so you can get the latest and greatest updates and talk about different stories, things like that. There might also be some like content and things like that, but they do have a samples area if you come over here that you can download various samples from architecture to games to like VFX. They got their metahumans within here, so there's all kinds of great stuff that Epic puts out for free. And I would highly suggest, at least at the very beginning, maybe downloading this content examples, and then you can take a look at that. Like I said, there's a bunch of different things for like blueprints, there's different things for VFX, there's models within there, so it's a great resource to get started and take a look at stuff. Marketplace, this is where users and companies can actually make different assets. They can make different asset packs that you could use for populating games and worlds and stuff like that. You could sell different blueprints, so visual scripting, like motion capture stuff, things for animation. There's all kinds of great resources that you could actually download. Some of it can be for free, and they've got a free section, but a lot of it's paid content on there. Okay, and then this area is probably the one that you're going to care about the most for development. So if you go to get a version, you can see I've got older versions before the Unreal Engine 5, but if you want to get the latest and greatest, I think yours is probably going to be blank like this, so you're just going to go click this engine versions like this, and once you do that, you can do a drop down and you can choose which version of the engine that you want to install. Now, I don't believe that I will be able to have access to anything with Unreal Engine 5 here because I actually have it installed already like that. Okay, so it is possible that you can uninstall these things, and you can uninstall them if there is an update to the engine, like a hot fix. You'll probably see something like that as well. Okay, so once you have the Unreal Engine 5 installed, you can go ahead and hit the launch button, and it should open up a screen for you, and it will let you see that the engine is starting to load. And it should look something like this. Again, this is what they are choosing at the time of the making of this video, so maybe a little bit later in the future they might swap out these things out. These things have changed quite a bit over time, so don't be surprised if yours looks just a little bit different. And it might take a little bit of time just to load up that very first time, and you can see it should give you a percentage, and we're getting pretty close here. And then at this point, what we are able to do is choose what do we want to create. Okay, so you could go ahead and click on, there's a tab for different games, there's film and video, you can do architecture, automotive, so there's a bunch of different templates that you can use. Let's go ahead and use the games template. And what I'm going to have you do is use the third person project, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually get access to this mannequin file that you see here, and we're going to be able to export that out and get that into Maya, and we're going to use that as a scale reference and start to understand something about scale. But they do have a first person template, they've got a top down vehicle, handheld AR, and they also have virtual reality, so it's pretty darn cool. So all we got to do is click on the third person thing. It's going to give us a project location, so this is pretty standard. This is where it's going to put it. It's going to take your name, and it's going to be, and I'm working with Windows, it's going to be under C, users, your username, and then it's going to have a documents area and put a folder for Unreal projects. So that's where it's going to put all these. We're going to use Blueprints, which is a visual scripting language. Now, if you know programming, you could do C++ if you want. We're targeting our platform. We're going to be working on the desktop. I want the maximum quality presets. If it's your first time starting off, you probably do want to use the starter content. And if you do that, it's going to give you some different models that you can play around with, some VFX, maybe some animation. So there's lots of different cool content that you could start off with this. Because I'm primarily going to be showing you how to use Maya and integrate the work that you're doing with Maya and bringing your own work in here, I'd rather have a clean project, so I'm not going to include starter content. So again, that is completely up to you, and you can give your project a name. So I'm going to call this Learning UE5, like this, and go ahead and hit create, and it's going to go ahead and create the project for us. And then once that's made, it should launch the viewer, the editor for us, and this will launch us into our first project that we have. Once it does that, it should have a very simple level that you can see, this third person template that we've got, like this. And you could, I don't think I'm going to worry about these plugins and things like that it's going to kind of worry about. So you can say dismiss for this. If it's telling your project's out of date, would you like to update it? You might want to go ahead and update that and do that. And you should be ready to start exploring the engine. Okay, let's go ahead and do a real quick tour of the engine. So you can see here, if you've used Unreal Engine 4, it looks a little bit different, and they've cleaned up the interface. I think they've got a really nice appeal looking factor to this, but you might be used to the Unreal Engine 4 setup. And if that's you, you can go to Windows, you can go to Load Layout, and you can do UE4 Classic Layout. Now I would say that I am more used to this layout, so within here you've got different things that you could choose from. You could do placing actors, lights, things like that, VFX, cinematics. So you've got a bunch of different options for things. So I am used to that. I'm also used to this outliner here that gives you a list of everything that's in the world, and then the details panel that gives you all the information for that thing that you've got selected. I'm also used to this content browser that you see down here. So if that's you and you feel more comfortable with that, go ahead and use that layout. You can just see what they've done is they've tried to maximize the viewport, and so you can see more of the viewport and have a little bit less of this going on. So if you are just starting off and you're new to UE5, you might want to just go to the default editor layout that they've got here, like this. If you hit Control Spacebar, that is going to bring up and down the different this content browser that you see here. That's going to allow you to get to the different objects and things within here. So like they've got a content folder and they've got characters, level prototyping, and third person. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as you see that. So they do have the outliner and the details panel is still going to be up within this layout. Like you can see, obviously it's got a much more maximized viewport, so that's good if you are probably doing things that's directly more within the engine and you need to see a little bit more of the engine space. So that's why they've added that there like that. And if you want to do this thing I was showing you that I like to have is this place actors, and that'll pull up this panel that we have within here. Now most of this stuff you can actually have, and you can have this floating if you wanted. You can actually dock things in a certain area if you wish. So there's a lot of flexibility with the engine and what you can do with it, and where you place things. So depending on how you want to have this set up, maybe you do a little bit of exploration with this and you figure out this is where I like to keep things. It's possible that you can drag this off into a secondary monitor, and so I have a secondary monitor running right now. You can't see it, but if you have multiple monitor setups, you might actually want to use that as an option for yourself. I'll just go ahead and dock this over here, and then I'll push this over here like this, a little bit smaller. And then with this content drawer, the hotkey, like I said, for that, if you hover over this, you can see it's Control Spacebar. We can add that up and down, but we can also tell this to dock in the layout. And then basically, I've just recreated that situation that we had where this kind of looks like Unreal Engine 4. Okay, so that's a real quick navigation of the engine. Before I take out of this step, the other part that I would like to maybe show you is this right here, the play button, and you can see the hotkey for that is Alt P. So let's do that, and you can jump directly in the engine. And if I use the controls WASD, you can see we can get this to run around. If we do the space bar, we can do some jumping. So what's really cool about the engine is that we can lay things out in the engine, we can place them, and you can see how that affects gameplay immediately, right? And if you want to hop out of this, all we have to do is hit escape, and that takes us out of here. We'll look a little bit more about navigation here in just a second, but that's how you can move in and out of this, like this, okay? Real quick, so Alt-P does the play within here. I also wanted to show you full screen mode. So if you hit F11, that will take you into a full screen mode like this, so we can run around in full screen, and you can take a look at that. And if you want to get rid of the Windows bar at the very bottom, you can add Shift with that. So we'll do Shift F11, and then now we're in a true full screen mode. We're running around just like we're in the game. And so that's a pretty cool option to be able to develop and then just hop in and out of the game at will. So I'll hit escape, and that throws us back out of here. So again, F11 will get us back into this mode here, and if you want your Windows toolbar, Shift F11. So that should be enough to get you in and out of the engine, just run around a little bit, explore that for a bit, and then let's start taking a look at, in the actual editor, how to do some navigation. Okay, let's talk navigation for the engine. The first thing I want to show you is that with this template, I wasn't aware that they did this, but if you tap 1 and 2, there's actually two cameras kind of saved for bookmarks on that. They do have a system for that. That's pretty nice. And if we just left mouse click, we can look around, and if you push forward while left mouse clicking and then drag back, it's almost like you're kind of driving a vehicle around like that. And if you right mouse click, it's like you're taking your head and you're just looking around. And if you do the middle mouse, you can drag up and down, and it's like taking you in an elevator up and down, and you can drag left and right. So it's kind of like you're strafing or shuffling to the left or to the right. So that's one way to kind of get around. And let's just say we choose this as a camera view and you like it. Now, because they've already got 2 camera views stored on 1 and 2, if I hold down Control and tap 3 while I'm holding down Control, that should add that as a new bookmark. So now after that's saved, I can tap 1, 2, and then 3, and here's my new view. And if we do the middle mouse scroll wheel, you can zoom in like that. So that's another way that you can kind of move through the world like that. So I'm just going to rotate with the right mouse button like this to look around after I scroll through and hit Control 4. So now I should have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I've got these different views saved. So I would definitely set up some camera views at the very beginning, so that just makes it real easy to get back to these different views and allows you to work in this way. So again, just left mouse click, kind of drive forward. If you push forward and backwards, it's moving you forward and backwards, and you can go left to right at the same time, kind of like you're driving a vehicle either forward or backwards. And then if you do the middle mouse, you can strafe left or right. If you go up and down with it, it's like an elevator. And if you right click and drag around, it's like you are just taking your neck and you're looking around within the world like that. Okay, so that's one way of being able to do that. The next thing that we'll take a look at is if you're used to first-person shooter games, you could hold down the right mouse button, and you could use W, A, S, and D to move around. And so if you do W, it's going to drive you forward. If you do S, it's going to go backwards. A is left, D is right. And I believe E will take you up in the air. C does a, it changes the focal length of your camera, and if you just let go of the right mouse, it goes back. So let's see, Q will actually take you down. E is up like this. So that's another way of getting around if you feel comfortable with that. Now, if you're using a really large map, you can see that there is a camera speed within here. So if you have a really large map, you could drag this up. I'm just going to do 6 like this, and it drives a whole lot faster. So if you're not used to these controls yet, that's probably going to trip you up a little bit, and that's going to be pretty difficult for you to use. But again, that's if you've got a much larger map and you need to get around quickly. So again, that's 6. It goes all the way up to 8. Now you can make these things go even slower. So the default is 4, so you can take this to 2, and if you want to drive really slow and you want to do that and you want to be precise with your motion, you could do that. So I'll just put that back to 4 and put that on the default. Okay, with any of these modes, we can tap on an object and we can tap F, and it'll frame in on that particular piece that we have here. So that becomes pretty convenient. Okay, and then after we select something and tap F, I'm going to show you the Maya controls. Okay, so if you're used to Maya, if you've got an object and this is in the center of the screen like this, if you hold down Alt and you left mouse click, that's going to rotate around that object. And if you Alt, sorry about that, Alt, and we do the scroll wheel, we can zoom in and out on this. And if we do Alt and right mouse, that will zoom in and out as well. So I'm just mainly using the Alt left mouse to rotate around, and then Alt right click, you can zoom in and out. And if you do the scroll wheel, you can do that as well. And those different methods should be everything you need to get around within the engine. Again, you could start to use combinations of things, and as you become maybe a little bit more skilled as a user, it'll be easy for you to just jump back and forth between the different methods, and you probably won't even really think about it too much. Now, this Maya method, I definitely use that when I'm selecting an object and I really need to have some focus on that. I like to select it, tap F, and then hold down Alt, left mouse, right, and then that allows me to inspect that element and then go to it pretty quickly. Also, if we have those camera views stored, if you need to get to an item pretty quickly, probably the fastest way is just select it and tap F, and you can frame in on that thing and then rotate around. Okay, so that's navigation, and then you definitely want to practice on that for a little bit. Just get yourself familiar with just moving around in the scene, and that does take a little bit of time to get used to, so just be patient with yourself and have a little bit of fun and explore the different ways of navigating within the engine. Okay, now that we're familiar with navigation, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can view some different aspects of our objects within the scene, but then also maybe investigate a little bit about things that exist within the content browser over here. So we've got one of these blue cubes selected, and you can see if we played in the game, these are actually physics actors, so you can actually simulate them and kind of bounce them around and things like that. So we've got the outliner, and you can see that they're placed within here. We've got the ability to move this thing around. So if we tap the space bar, we can do either translation, so we can move it around, and we can move it within these axes here, one axis at a time. You can do that, or you can see there's like a little cube here that lets you move within two axes at once. So you can do this little cube within through there, and you can do those two axes at the same time. And then the one down below will let you move around in those two axes at the same time, like that. Now as you're moving, we do have grid increment snapping, so that's enabled right now. So that's set to snap to 10 increments, and if you were to go ahead and turn that on or off, you can turn these on or off. This is rotation snapping, and then this is snapping for scale. So each one of those has a different numeric setting on here. So if you see, if I put this to, let's just say 100, and I push this, you can see how it's moving quite a bit different, and it's just snapping to 100 increments on here. So if you build everything to a grid standard, think of it like Legoing, you can get things to snap together way easy that way. So the default for that was 10, and that gives you pretty finite amount of movement at this level that you see here. But if you wanted to go even lower, you can go even lower than that, all the way down to 1 increment. And if you need just extreme placement where you don't want to be snapping to a grid anymore, you can turn this off. Again, same thing for rotation and same thing for scale as well. So we've got spacebar, and then that will allow us to cycle back and forth between, this is the picker, and that's Q. And so hotkeys, this is very similar to Maya. So if you select this with Q, you get the picker. W is going to give you move, E, rotate, and R is going to give you scale like this. And so scale and rotate works the same way. You could do one individual axis. You could do overall, like scaling this way, like that. You could do one dimension here, like this, or this, and through here. And then these triangles let you do scaling along 2 different axes at the same time. So it's going to hit undo to get that back. Now if you are moving, the other thing is sometimes this works, sometimes not, depending on the collision within here. If you hit the end key, that should force this to just drop down to the lowest thing that it's going to hit. So like if I have it above this here, if I hit end, you can see it's going to throw this on top of that there, like that. And so I do believe these cubes, they put a blue material on here, and so you can see over here in the outliner, this is the actual static mesh, and so that just means this is a mesh that we have, and you can go ahead, if you found something in the content browser, you could replace this with a different mesh. Let me see on here, if I go to meshes under the level prototyping, so you can see they're using this blue chamfer cube for that, but if we put this cylinder here, if you have that selected, you could actually plug it in using this here, and you can see this new cylinder that we have here. Now that did change this to have a different material. I'm just going to go ahead and hit undo for that. They do have this blue material on here just to indicate that they're making those physics actors. And if we go in the outliner within through here and then the details panel, you can see we have the ability to numerically change values on this stuff. So watch this. If we put this at translation 0, tab 0, tab 0, and we tap F, this is actually the origin of the world. This, which is to me maybe a little bit odd for this map, but I guess no big deal. But yeah, I like to have everything kind of centered. So I like to, I personally would like to have this entire world, like the center of the world, be at this center mark there. But it doesn't really matter. I just kind of like it for throwing new objects in there and getting them centered and things like that. So that's up to you how you want to do that. But that will allow you to numerically put a value in here. And like I was saying, if we translate along a certain axis on here and we're snapping to 10 10 grid increments like that, you can do a very specific location for this thing. So if I push this over here and I push this up and through here like this, tap end, maybe I want to put this at like 850 and maybe this at 750 like this, and then I'll leave this at, I think I should make it a whole number like 50 like that. And you can see the different axes, how they've got these color coordinated. So this is the x-axis within through here, y is going this direction, and then z is up and down. So depending on the program that you're used to, you might have that in a different way. You know, normally in Maya you have y up, and then z is back and forth when through here. And so then the x-axis would be kind of like this, this would be y, and this is z. So again, it just all depends on what you're kind of used to, right? We've already looked at how we can do Alt-P, and we can play within here like this, right? And so again, if we place that and we run into it, it's set up as a physics actor. Now if we go here and we do turn off the simulate physics, let's see what happens at that point. Nothing happens. Okay, so that little mark there is actually enabling it to simulate the physics, and they're giving it a mass for how much this thing is supposed to weigh. And so yeah, so we're not going to get deep into that, but there's an area for physics, there's an area for collision. So let's just say this collision presets, let's just turn off physics, and instead of block all dynamic, let's just say no collision like this. And let's go ahead and play, and if we've done this right, we should just be able to run straight through the cube. So depending on what you're hoping for, if we want block all, let's see, yeah, block all, we'll go ahead and play that again, and now the collision should be enabled for that, but we crashed. Okay, let's just go ahead and send a restart. Let me pause the video and I'll just come back and I should be able to load that back up. Okay, here we are loaded back up. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the play button and go through here. So the options that we set, I turned off physics, and we do have that to block. So I can do that. I can jump up on the object now, things like that. So, okay, no big deal for that. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to have physics enabled for that, and go back to that like that. Hit Control Spacebar to bring back this. Actually, yeah, what I had on here was the place actors open like this, and I had the content drawer open, and then I just docked this in the layout. So we're kind of back to where we're at before, and we got our hotkeys and everything else like that. So unfortunate, sometimes you will crash and you will have to deal with that. I wasn't expecting that, but we just kind of deal with that on the fly. We also have this as our player start. So if you wanted to have the player start in a different location, let's say we wanted to go up here like this, we can push this up here, and then I can hit end like that. And then now if I hit play, you can see the player is going to start right there. It should have a directional component. There's an arrow to that. So if you wanted the player to start facing this direction, we could rotate that, and you can see we've got the player to start in a very specific area. It doesn't have to be on the ground. You could also do this where you are starting in the air like this, and you will fall and then start back through there. So that it's up to you where you want to kind of move those components for those things on there. Okay, so we looked at one of these cubes within here. We also have these different shapes in here, and you can see again everything might have its own different type of material. Now one thing you can do within here is that we showed if you had a different material selected over here in the content browser, and let's say we went to level prototyping and there are some different materials on there, you can select a material and you can plug it in here like that, and you can change the material that way. You should also be able to click and then drag materials onto selections like this. So that's another way of assigning materials quickly like that. The other thing is what they have is you can browse to where this thing actually sits within the content browser. So if we click that, you can see this is the material. and we click this, and it shows this is the material that's assigned to it, and this is where it sits in the content browser. Same thing for our static meshes. So if we go ahead and click this folder icon, you can see this is the piece that's being used, and it sits within the content area and level prototyping, and then the meshes area, like that. Okay, so there is a texture tab within here. If we looked at the material, so let's go ahead and navigate to where the material is, and if you double click on it, this opens up the material editor window where you can see this. Now this is actually, I believe, a material instance, so this looks a little bit different. Navigation is still the same as what we have within the world. If you hold down L, you can click and you can drag the light around for this. Now material instance is going to be set up in a way where if you make a material, you can expose different parameters and you can change these things on the fly. So you could actually change on this grid color, like let's say we wanted to make this like a red, kind of like that. You have the ability to do that. I can hit undo for that. But you could change these different parameters on here and change that. Now in this area, this will let you navigate to what the parent material is. So where do all these options come from? The parent material. So if we navigate to that in the content browser, we just click that. Now this might be a little bit difficult for you to see because I have to move that. But when I click that button, it's actually choosing this M prototype grid. So let's double click that and then take a look at what this looks like. So middle mouse drag out from here. And if I right click and drag, I can pan around. So we're not going to get too much into this because this is diving into materials at this point. But this is what is being fed into the base color. And they've parameterized some of these different things. They also have, and the base color is just going to be the like albedo color for this. So the gray and the black lines and things like that. They also have a roughness value, and the roughness value is set to 1. So that just means it's not going to have any specular component to it at all. Now if we put this at like something like 0.2 or something like that, we could do that. You can see that this is if we click on it, this was turned into a parameter, so it's got the value of roughness here for the parameter name, and it's got a default value of 1. If we go over this material instance and take a look at that, we should be able to find this roughness value, click it, and enable it, so then we can actually change that. So if we put this at like 0.2, you can see that the material is going to be a whole lot shinier. If I hit save, we should be able to see a change on that, and then now you can see that we've got this kind of sheen factor going on for the material within through there, like that. And if we go and put this at 0, we're turning it into something that should feel a bit more like glass. So now you can see a whole lot more reflectivity on that. And these material instances are really nice because they basically allow you to tune these values, and you can see them show up interactively within the world like this. So if you want to dial in a nice look for this and say like we find 0.2 works really well for the scene and what it looks like in there, you can go ahead and change that and save it. Okay, so there's a real quick look at materials. Let's go ahead and do this. So if you select a model or you select something in the world and you hit Control B, that's the same thing as hitting this little browse in the find this in the content browser for us. So it took the actual mesh that we have and it's going to find it in the content browser for us. And then if we want to view this and view the properties of it, we can go ahead and double click on this and load it up. And we've got because this is a static mesh, and this is the naming conventions that they do for this, SM underscore whatever that thing is, static mesh underscore cube. So if you follow those naming conventions, it does help you, and it kind of helps you keep organized and understand what it is that you're dealing with on here. Okay, so on here, the things that you might care about is there is collision, so you could view collision within here. You can also maybe take a look at your UVs for what are on here, and we'll get into UVs a little bit later, but you can see that this is how this is laid out, and it's laid out in a nice even fashion so we can get this grid pattern to show up on it. And if it has 2 UV channels, the second UV channel is for baking lighting information on there. So you might be wondering, why are there 2 different channels? And in programming terms, they always start with the number 0 to start counting. So that's why we have a UV channel 0, and that's our first UV index that we're using, and then the second channel that we're using is 1, like that. So that's why we have that. If you don't want to see that, you can click on none, like that. So a little bit of a change in Unreal Engine 5 versus 4 for me. The way that you can see collision for the objects is you can go to Show, and you can see Simple Collision, and you can see that on here. So this is pretty simple because it's a cube, but you can see that the collision object for this just matches pretty much perfectly, just because it's such a simple object like this, right? You might also be able to go show collision. If you do complex collision, it actually uses the mesh itself as a way to use for collision. So if you needed something that's really precise, you could use the actual mesh itself for collision. And if you go over here to the collision area, instead of project default, you could use complex collision as simple, and that would allow you to use the actual mesh itself. Now that becomes a much more expensive option, so you do have to watch out for that. So if this was something that was a little bit more complex, you would see quite a bit of a difference between what the collision looks like versus the object. So if I put this on simple collision and turn off the complex collision, the other thing is that what we can do is collision. I'll just remove collision altogether, and let's turn off this simple collision like that. So I think we got that, and I'll just go ahead and add a sphere simplified collision. So you could potentially use a sphere to use for the collision on this. Now this, you might get some kind of rolling behavior or something like that, so that's probably why you wouldn't want to use that. You can select the collision and you can move it around. I'm going to go ahead and just delete for that. I'm going to close out of this and not save it. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of show you a little bit of the options for getting in there and moving around. So that's a static mesh that doesn't have any bones or any animation to it. Now if we go to this area, if we go to characters and then we go to mannequins, they do have the old UE4 mannequin within here that you could get access to, but then they've got these new mannequins. And if we go to the meshes area, they have a skeletal mesh SKM, Manny, and Quinn. So they've got a male and a female, and they've got a simple version of both the male and the female. So what I've noticed about the difference between these two is not the meshes. The mesh complexity of these is not simplified. It's actually the amount of bones, how many joints they have within the skeleton. In the simplified version, you can see under here, if you just hover your cursor over it, it gives you the different information on here. So it's got how many vertices, how many triangles it has. So that's the polygon count that it has, and then the amount of bones. So the simple version has 89 bones, and then this one has 169. And I think, yeah, the triangle count is exactly the same, so nothing different within there. Let's just go ahead and load up the skeletal mesh Manny, the more complex version. So you double click on it, and just like what we were looking with the material editor, we've got an area where we can see the skeletal mesh on here. So if we select him, tap F, we can do this whole thing with the Maya controls, and we can rotate around it and everything else like that. And you can see we can select these different pieces for this within here. It does have in the details area, you can see the different materials that it has within here. This is obviously a whole lot more complex. The mesh, this is showing what the mesh is plugged into it, the animation rig that it has, and again you can navigate to all this and take a look at it. And we have these different panels over here that would show you, like, this is the skeleton for it and the bones that you have within here. And if we take a look here, this is going to show us some of the mesh information. And if we go here, we can take a look at animation data. And then within here, we've got like the animation. This is considered like an animation blueprint, and it shows the graph for how this thing works. So this gets a bit more complicated within here because this is an actual character that's going to be running around and it has logic to it and things like that. So that probably might look a little bit scary for you at the very beginning just to kind of look at, but it's at least something where you can get and take a look, and you can see the different meshes within here and everything. Now I'm not sure if the skeleton on here is the same for both the male and the female, and it's driving all the different animations. That would probably make sense. But yeah, so you can see this, and we can zoom in and out on here. You can hold down L and you can click and drag the light around just like what we were doing before. So this is how we can view this within here. So let's go ahead and close this down here. The next thing I'm going to show you is that we can actually click and we could drag this into the world, and then we could rotate and position, and we can scale, and we can put these in here. So if I want to make a copy, I haven't showed you this yet. If you hold down Alt while you click and drag out on one of these axes like this, you can drag out a copy of this. So let's just go ahead and rotate this 180, and let's scale this up. So I'm going to tap the space bar, and we'll scale up a version and make it 2 times as big as normal. And let's tap the space bar, hold down Alt and click out a version, and let's scale this one down and make it half the scale of normal, like that. Let's just go ahead and play Alt P. That will drop us in there, I think. Let me see what I did wrong here. Let's find the player start, and I'm not sure if I push this within up above here, so I'm just going to hit end like this and then play, and I'm dropping through the world. I think I know what I did. Whenever I was on here and messing around with some of this stuff, I accidentally, let's hit Control B and then take a look. Those changes that I was making to this, where I did get rid of the collision, I'm falling through the floor, so I didn't save that, but it still held those options that we had in here. So we can just fix that pretty quick. So we can do a add box simplified collision. I'm going to go ahead and hit save, close out of it, and I destroyed the collision on there and did not recognize that. Okay, so now our character drops within the scene. We can run around, and remember, we can hit F11 to do a full screen mode on here like this. So I can run up and I can take a look at these new characters that we placed on here, and we can start doing some evaluation of, I don't know, maybe we've got a cast of characters and we want a big, large, giant creature in here, and that can help us establish something about scale. And then maybe we've got some smaller characters running around like this. So that's a way that you could figure out something about scale with inside of here. Okay, so the next thing that we'll take a look at is this. Let's take a look at how we can actually take these models and we can get them outside of this program and into another program like Maya. Okay, the last thing that we're going to take a look at, maybe not quite as exciting, but it is definitely necessary for you to think about the assets and where they live and how to get access to them, not with only inside the program, but outside the program as well. So you can see that we have this folder called content, and then we have engine. So every time we download the Unreal Engine and we load it up, it's going to have certain content that comes with the engine that you're going to be able to find within there. And so something that's really cool about the Unreal Engine that I like quite a bit is that it's possible for you to search for, let's just try to find a sphere. So if you go to this root directory for this, type in sphere, you can find everything that ships with the engine or is part of the engine that has to do with a sphere, right? So that's a way of doing masking for selection on there. And the other thing that you could do is if you wanted to find, let's say, everything materials, you can go to this drop down here and we can turn on this for materials. And if we're at the root folder, then we can find everything within the engine that has anything to do with materials. So it's possible that you could take these and maybe steal them. I would say steal, but we can borrow them. So let me show you this. If we went under content and we do have level prototyping, they already have a materials folder area. This is super simple. So you could you could make a folder on just about any area that you want. I'll show you this after we move this, but they've already got this materials area. So what I'll do is click and drag this material and I'll put it in this area like this, and when I do that, it's going to give me the option. Do you want to move it here or you want to copy it here? I'm not going to move it. I'm going to keep it in the engine. I'm going to copy it here. So it's going to make a copy of that material, and it's going to tell you that it did that. So we got materials, and then here's our desert outer HDRI material. And let's see if we can just click and drag that onto some of these pieces here like that. So maybe I'll hit undo. Maybe I'll leave the floor a grid, but then maybe we take the walls and then we do that with this within through here like that. Okay. I think they have a meshes area. I'm going to take it off the mask that we have here, reset filters, and I was hoping that maybe they had a sphere in here. I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag this out, and I'll make it pretty large within here, and then move that to this area, and then we'll go to our materials, and then we can drag this in here. Now if it's got this little asterisk on here, it just means you need to save it. So if you right click and save, you can do that. And so we've taken that material out of the engine, and now we have it within our content area. Let me show you how we can get to these things within the in the Windows browser and stuff like that. So we can just right click on this thing and we can show and explore, and that will navigate for us and open up the actual folder that it sits. And what I was telling you is if you go under your C drive, under users, your username, documents, Unreal projects, this is where all your Unreal projects are going to be. So at the beginning of this, I just made a new project called Learning UE5. It makes this directory structure for us. We've got config files saved, and so that's the different settings for the engine and stuff like that. But then the thing that you're probably going to be concerned about, like if you want to transfer this information from one project to another, is the content folder. So it is possible that you can move things that you're making from one project to another by keeping things consistent with this content folder. So if we double click in here, you can see that we've got a mirror of everything. We've got, let me load that up like that and then put this back here. So you can see we've got content and we got characters, we've got level prototyping, and then third person like that, right? So we can get it within there. And it did navigate us to that area. We were in level prototyping under materials, and then we've got this desert outer material that we had, and so it helped just navigate. Take a note on here that this is a .uasset, so that's an Unreal asset, and that's their own proprietary format that they have here. Now we will look at this a bit more, but if you wanted to get these models out, it is possible for you to select this, right click on it, and then say asset actions, and you can export that. So we could export that out as an FBX, and that's one way that we can get that out of the program this way, and we could import that into a program like Maya. Now if you wanted to get a like a layout from here, if we select this, I'm going to hold down Control and keep adding to the selection for this, and if let's say we wanted to get this play space area and maybe just this cube and this here like that. If we were to go to File, let's see, File, Export Selected right here like this, we could export that out as a like a template map thing, and we could load that into a program like Maya as well, and then have a template for that and have that loaded as well. So the other thing that we'll take a look at for establishing scale is we'll find the mannequin, we'll hit Control B like that, and we'll go ahead and export that out, and we'll get that pulled into Maya. And we'll start learning how we can start moving meshes back and forth between the two different programs. So we're using both our content authoring program, and that could be something like Blender. It's really up to you what you're using, but I'll be showing Maya. But we're going to set up a pipeline. We'll get things established to where we can move things back and forth between the two different programs, and you'll start to feel comfortable with making sure your scale relationships between the two different programs is working. You can make content in one area or the other, and you can push them back and forth, and you can share that work.